What's going on? What's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to Spreaker.com. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Giving it to you here. How are you? Today's special is going to be on an album that I dug a whole lot. It came out 40 years ago. It was what I call one of those turning point albums, one of those albums that defied a time, an era, a sound, a style. And when you listen to a particular artist, it really speaks volumes about the impact of what you're trying to remember and how everything just, took a life of its own. Um, you really want to be reflective, and you really want to just take the time to appreciate all that. The album that I'm going to talk about, an artist, is Rick James' Street Songs, and it's 40 years old this month. And I got the deluxe edition right here in my hand. Born in Buffalo, New York, and he meant a great deal to the city, the community, the arts, the whole nine. He also happened to go to high school. My father had been at high school, most other schools Rick James went to. But this album, Rick wanted to come back to the projects, wanted to come back home, wanted to reflect on, he needed to get that realness to get it back. And this album was definitely a turning point. Ice Cube called this the first of its time gangster type of album, street album, because it was an album that it really went to the streets. It really went to something to make you feel what was happening, what was going on. And you were definitely relating to all those elements. And we just go by step by the classic songs here on this album. We start off with Give It To Me Baby, which was a trip out song about, him talking about being impotent with his girl. And it was a trip to hear a guy who was boasting and braggadocious to say that he got so high what he couldn't do. It was a trip. And the horn arrangements, the groove, the melody, that's why this became one of the best songs 40 years ago. Why it still is a classic. Tina Marie and the Temptations are on the song. Incredible song, still bumps to this day. Love that song. Then we go to Ghetto Life, which was about his tales going up at the Perry Projects in Buffalo. If you familiar with the projects in Buffalo and what have you, you know what you dealt with. You know the street hustlers, the everything, the whole nine. And he put that picture there and he painted it. And it was in that bass and that groove. Again, the Temptations are, I think, on the background vocals, strong cut. One of them songs that you just, you feel the emotion to it, the depth of it, the honesty of it. And his vocals were very much reflecting that pain. Incredible. The next song, Make Love to Me. Love the jazz vibe of this song. Narada Michael Walton was on drums. And it had a rich texture to it. Love the saxophone. Love the playing of the instrumentation of it. One of them songs that you could just feel the richness of. And Rick James was so underrated as an arranger. Obviously, he was top on production, but as arrangements, he could definitely get the details of what he wanted, And that was one of the finer points about him. He played well enough to get a song get to a groove. He wasn't, he was going to blow you away as an instrumentalist per se, but he could play enough to get what he wanted. However, his ear for arrangements and details and production was top tier. And the guy obviously was a great songwriter, so he definitely got the boasting and definitely got that. So that one was incredible, slow cut. Put it to you like this. That's one of those kind of songs that on another artist who was more of a balladeer, that would have been a main song. Could you imagine at the time Luther Vandross, to Freddie Jackson, etc. cats having a song like that on the album? That would have been a hit. This was just an album track. That's a power for that song. The next song hits close to home, Mr. Policeman. And when you see what's going on with Dante Wright, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, etc., through the whole Black Lives Matter, the whole past era, Ashley Arbros, everything that's going on with the police and black folks, This was a powerful song. Imagine 40 years ago he shot my friend down, and he wrote, I'd rather be this than the police. He was singing this when it wasn't even fashionable, okay? So, an incredible nod to the future and what was happening in the streets, because there was no cameras, there was no footage, and this was happening all over. He was speaking on it back in the day. That was a powerful song. Again, Tina Marie's on the hook and Stevie Wonder's on harmonica. It's an incredible song. The next song is Super Freak, which he's pretty much known for as far as like the pop audience. Like, it will go by the pop, but it says a lot that this guy was, I want to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 albums into his career. Fifth album, and this happened to be the fifth song on the album, that this was the one that crossed him over, you know. And obviously what makes the songs incredible even more so is that you fast forward almost a decade later and MC Hammer comes along, takes the song to a whole new audience, and it's called You Can't Touch This. That's incredible that you take one song that was happening with the R&B pop crowd, then you fast forward 10 years later almost, and it hits with the hip-hop heads, pop crowd, and R&B. Incredible. But that's the greatness of Rick James as a songwriter. You understand it with what this song, comical, tongue-in-cheek song, and it works. It's got that snappy Euro vibe, got that, that pop thing going, that new wave thing going, but it was on point, and the long version is funky too. The next cut is Fire and Desire, duo with Tina Marie. She reportedly had a fever, but Rick said, you gotta get him to do this. They cut one of the most honest, heartfelt songs, and this was back in the day when an album track was a radio hit and it became a radio staple. This song was one of the best duets of the last 40 years, period. And they were something else together. And this song never fails to disappoint. Still one of the best slow jams you're ever going to hear in any era. Rawness, soulful, cold. Both complemented one another. And it was a great song. Amazing. The next song, Call Me Up. And this one is like he's almost freestyle on this song. I love the bass on this song. I love the groove on it. Like the percussion part. To some it might be like a throwaway, but it was a bump and cut. It had a nice firm groove to it. It was like one of them songs they could definitely bop to. Like his vocals on it. That freestyle was tight too, by the way. The next cut, the last cut, is Below the Funk Past the Joint. This was like his nod to Buffalo. It's like a freestyle, the way it was played, but it was definitely a happening cut. It's like when you cut a song like this, you know you got it in the bag. You know you got it made, And it's definitely one of those cuts that you can definitely, you're vibing to, you're feeling what was going on. Just incredible. Just really like the vibe of that cut. The 12-inch mixes consist of Give It To Me Baby, and Give It To Me Baby, the instrumental, Super Freak, the long version, which I'm going to tell you has a cold synthesizer run that ain't no joke. I mean, that synth groove is stank. And it shows that he was able to adapt to not only traditional horns and groove, but he could also do the synth pop, synth funk thing. That's when you know you're musical. Rick James showed it with that. And then, of course, you have the Super Freak instrumental, which was tight. Dug that. We're going to get to Disc 2. Disc 2 consists of live performances. Introduction. It was filmed in Long Beach, California in July of 1981. And it was previously unreleased. And it featured Ghetto Life, Big Time, the one that Leroy Burgess wrote for him, which was, it was cut in the Rick James production arrangement. The groove was stank and funky. Previously Coming to My Life. And then you got Sucker for Your Love with Tina Marie. Tina Marie cut that. Square Biz. Sucker for Your Life was written with Rick James on her 79 debut album. And she did this live in Square Biz too. And she freestyled and she was fire on that. Got Fired Up on here, which was tight live. Love Gun, which was tight. Do You Want Some Funk interlude? The long version of Mary Jane live, you got to hear that. That goes cold. That still rocks. Super Freak, You and I, and Give It To Me Baby. And he had known that he had definitely came with the goods here. He definitely knew that he had, you know, he definitely had the cuts. And this is why he had made it to the point of being a big time artist. So I put in perspective about Rick James 40 years ago. He was bigger than Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, and Prince, and Ray Parker Jr. Anybody that you want to consider was a happening act, R&B, or what have you at the time, Rick was that dude. Rick was that dude. He didn't get the fanfare, the racism from MTV and other spots because he was outspoken black man, and I will always defend that and say that's the truth. The reason why he gets to say that and defend that is because David Bowie came out in '83 and questioned MTV why they didn't put black acts on their network. And there's all truth to that, you know. But the impact of this record stylistically was definitely a record that was a blueprint. One of the greatest albums to ever come out. And, you know, Rick James hit his commercial peak and prime with this record. And he still put out funky stuff after, but this one just was like culminated. Like he had definitely got it all in. And it's like, this is one of the records you born to make. You made a statement, dropped the mic, you know. And again, it was a full-fledged, much respect to the Stone City Band. Great talent, great musicianship, complimenting. And you just felt the depth and versatility. But one thing about Rick James, he always had a soulful presence no matter what he was doing. And it definitely was, you know, felt throughout this album. One of those albums that I remember playing it all the time. You know, the album went triple platinum, but it felt like even more than that because it was just too happening that you could not ignore it. He was selling on shows, the Stone City Band everywhere, you know. Even broke records in Memphis, Tennessee. That was Presley's hometown. And that was saying something for black artists. Because a lot of people take for granted success and records and things, and they don't always understand the magnitude of what that meant at that particular time and how you look at it, what it was like at that time. Because, you know, nowadays people got streams and dreams and they get sold or they sold this and that. But at that time, it was hardcore going to the record store, buying your tape or your cassette, 8-track or vinyl, whatever you was buying, it later CD, you know, and it was a big thing. And he was, you know, definitely big news with that. I mean, you know, it was, I remember getting a Soul Train tribute. You know, it's funny, Don Cornelius and others. And you sit there and you're like, marvel, because, again, Rick James didn't always get his due musically. And you got to respect as a songwriter, as a producer, as a arranger, conceptualist, and as a vocalist. I mean, the guy brought the goods. But this record definitely represented the time period and one of those records that has stood the test of time. And, you know, and it just showcases his creativity and the vast depth of what he was able to command and get as an artist. You know, when you make a record that is reflective of that, it's going to go out there and it's definitely going to leave a lasting impact. And I like to say that this was one of the best albums I had ever heard back in the day and still to this day. You know, Rick James is one of the all-time greatest artists as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what nobody says, because when you can write, produce, and create a body of work where it's still felt, and then in other genres, and it's been sampled and looped to death, and, you know, he's got songs that have been touched upon in different genres, and it's, you know, and that's still going to be the norm. So he definitely put it down, and this was just a great album. And it definitely, being from Buffalo, it definitely made me feel proud. You know, it's like the song back in Buffalo Loud saying proud. And this song was definitely hitting. And it's still, this album is just like one of those records where you can say, yeah, I put this up and it's going to definitely hold its own. So that's my thoughts and takes about Rick James' Street Songs Deluxe Edition. If you get a chance, please do check it out. If you're fans of his music, you know, check it out. Be safe out there. Be careful out there. I welcome thoughts, comments, and feedback. Please hit subscribe. And I do respond. Thank you very much. And this has very one. And I'm going to be doing other albums in time to time. But I definitely want to make this one. Peace and the best. I'm out.